Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. Let's take a breath together, shall we? You're here because something has stirred in you, maybe curiosity, maybe frustration, maybe that lingering ache that no man wants to admit but every man has felt, the ache of a woman pulling away, or the ache of your own power slipping quietly from your grasp. Have you ever felt that invisible shift when her gaze starts to wander, when her affection becomes rationed like a scarce commodity, when suddenly your words no longer land the way they once did? You reach out, she pulls back. You speak, she goes silent. It's infuriating, isn't it? And here's what no one tells you. That very moment when you feel powerless is exactly when you possess the greatest potential for influence, but not through force, not through desperate pleas. Not even through explanation, it's through silence, through the conscious, calibrated art of ignoring, not as a tactic of cruelty, but as an act of self-possession. Because ignoring a woman, when done with clarity, intention, and psychological insight, is not about withholding love, it's about commanding respect. And in the landscape of romance, where so much is unsaid, how you choose to say nothing speaks volumes. In today's conversation, I'm going to guide you through this delicate, fascinating dance, what I call the art and dark psychology of ignoring a woman. Let's take a breath together, shall we? You're here because something has stirred in you, maybe curiosity, maybe frustration, maybe that lingering ache that no man wants to admit but every man has felt, the ache of a woman pulling away, or the ache of your own power slipping quietly from your grasp. Have you ever felt that invisible shift when her gaze starts to wander, when her affection becomes rationed like a scarce commodity, when suddenly your words no longer land the way they once did? You reach out, she pulls back. You speak, she goes silent. It's infuriating, isn't it? And here's what no one tells you. That very moment when you feel powerless is exactly when you possess the greatest potential for influence, but not through force, not through desperate pleas. Not even through explanation, it's through silence, through the conscious, calibrated art of ignoring, not as a tactic of cruelty, but as an act of self-possession. Because ignoring a woman, when done with clarity, intention, and psychological insight, is not about withholding love, it's about commanding respect. And in the landscape of romance, where so much is unsaid, how you choose to say nothing speaks volumes. When I speak of ignoring, I am not speaking of ghosting or dismissiveness. I am speaking of a kind of psychological withdrawal that allows you to reclaim your center. You see, relationships are not just built on words, affection, and shared memories. They are built on power dynamics, on tension, on polarity. And polarity thrives when there is mystery, when there is space. Sometimes that space needs to be deliberately created, and that is where this art begins. I want you to imagine a scene. You've been investing in her attention, in her affection, in her emotions. You've sent the texts, you've been available, you've responded quickly, and what happens? Instead of drawing her closer, she begins to slip away. The paradox of desire is at play here. Too much accessibility dilutes attraction. We don't always desire what is handed to us freely, especially when it's handed over without discernment. The first principle to understand is that ignoring a woman resets the emotional balance. When she feels your absence, even in the room, she begins to wonder again. And when she wonders, she invests. When you step back, you reframe yourself not as a man seeking validation, but as a man who is already whole, already self-contained. And this is crucial. The power in ignoring is not in cutting her off, but in demonstrating that you are not governed by her reactions. You no longer orbit around her mood swings or whims. You become your own gravitational force. The act of ignoring, when done from a place of strength and not resentment, restores polarity. It says, I see you, but I don't need to chase you. I am enough. Let's go deeper into what this really means in practice. Ignoring is not about slamming the door or withdrawing coldly. It's about subtle detachment. Maybe you don't reply instantly. Maybe you take your time before offering a response. Maybe you engage with your life fully, your work, your passions, your body, and you stop presenting yourself as perpetually available to her emotional tides. You might think that this sounds manipulative, but I want to ask you something. Isn't it manipulative to constantly seek her attention, to abandon your own boundaries in an attempt to secure hers? True power is in restraint, and this is where dark psychology comes into play, not in harming her, but in understanding the unconscious mechanisms that drive human connection. When you ignore what really happens in her mind, this is where it becomes fascinating. The feminine psyche is attuned to presence, to attention. She feels it instinctively. When your attention retracts, she doesn't just notice the silence. She feels the absence of your gaze, your interest, your energetic focus. And absence creates tension. Tension creates curiosity. Curiosity reawakens desire. The reason many men fail here is that they ignore from a place of anger or hurt. That energy is palpable, and it drives her further away. But when you ignore from a place of quiet confidence, when your absence feels like a man who is simply tending to his own life, she senses it differently. It's not punishment, it's power. You see, too often men confuse accessibility with affection. They believe that constant engagement demonstrates love, when in fact it erodes polarity. Polarity thrives on distance, on anticipation, on the unknown. When you become too known, too predictable, too emotionally available, the polarity dissolves. Ignoring strategically is not cruelty. It is an act of preservation, both of your own dignity and of the erotic tension that fuels attraction. Now imagine again that scene. You have been texting less. You do not respond immediately. She reaches out, and this time she feels your absence. That space makes her wonder, where is his mind? Why isn't he pursuing? What is he doing that doesn't involve me? And that question reignites her engagement. But this isn't just about her behavior. More importantly, it's about your inner state. Ignoring well requires emotional discipline. It's about recentering yourself so that you are no longer reactive to her mood, swings, or withdrawals. It's about holding your own value without needing constant external confirmation. And let's not forget, when you begin to pull back in this way, something else happens inside you. You rediscover yourself. You realize how much energy you have been pouring into a dynamic that was, perhaps, starting to deplete you. You recover your focus, your drive, your passions, your solitude, and in doing so, you become more magnetic. The art and dark psychology of ignoring a woman is really the art of presence through absence. You are still present, but your focus has shifted inward. You remain grounded, calm, and attentive to your own needs, desires, and ambitions. This energy is deeply attractive. It communicates to her, on a level beyond words, that you are not hers to control, that you are your own man, mysterious, autonomous, and whole. When you embrace this art, you'll see that it's not about power over her. It's about reclaiming the power within you. It's about stepping back from the dance long enough for her to feel the void, for her to experience the imbalance that she may not have realized she was creating. It's about creating space, not as a manipulation, but as an invitation for mutual respect and polarity to return. Now let's continue deeper into this journey together, because understanding this subtle dynamic is just the beginning of a profound transformation, both within yourself and in the way she begins to see you. Now let's continue deeper into this journey together, because understanding this subtle dynamic is just the beginning of a profound transformation, both within yourself and in the way she begins to see you. You see, most men make the mistake of thinking that if they ignore a woman, they must disappear completely. They pull away dramatically or vanish in ways that feel like punishment. But true psychological detachment is much more nuanced. It's a withdrawal of energy, not necessarily of physical presence. You can sit beside her at dinner, you can share a home, and yet withdraw your emotional investment so that your attention is no longer constantly fixed on her reactions, her validation, or her moods. This is what makes it so potent, because it's invisible. She may not even know exactly what is happening at first, but she will feel it. You are no longer immediately accessible to her emotional drama. You no longer rush to fill the silences. You are simply present, grounded, attending to your own thoughts, your own life, your own soul. This is not stonewalling. This is self-containment, and it is magnetic. The second principle here is the power of unpredictability. A man who is too predictable loses allure, because predictability is the death of mystery. Mystery is what keeps her imagination engaged, and imagination is the fuel of desire. When she knows exactly when you will text, exactly how you will respond, exactly how you will soothe her insecurities, she no longer needs to wonder about you. So when you ignore, you disrupt that predictability. You introduce just enough uncertainty that she must reach out energetically toward you, instead of relaxing in the certainty of your emotional labor. This doesn't mean playing games. It means returning to your center, attending to your own interests, and allowing your rhythm to flow from your truth, not from her needs. For example, maybe you would usually reply within minutes because you felt the pressure of maintaining the connection. But now you wait, you allow yourself to finish your workout, to stay immersed in your book, to complete your thoughts. And when you respond, you do so from a calm, grounded place, not from the urgency of needing her to feel secure or pleased with you. This reorients the dynamic. You become the anchor. You are no longer tossed around by her shifting moods. You respond on your terms from a place of fullness, and she begins to feel this. She may test you, and she probably will. She may act colder, more distant, more demanding at first. But remember, when you shift the energy, it destabilizes the old patterns. This is necessary. She must feel the shift in order to adjust. What's happening inside her, psychologically, is this. You are interrupting her certainty. The human mind craves what it cannot fully grasp. When you are too emotionally accessible, too available, you become fully graspable and desire wanes. When you pull back, you become an open question again, and questions invite curiosity. Curiosity awakens pursuit. This is why some of the most magnetic men you'll ever encounter are men who maintain a kind of psychological sovereignty. They are not reckless or cold, they are deeply rooted in their own life and purpose. Their attention is a precious gift, and because it is not always freely given, it becomes more valuable. But here is the nuance that many men miss. This must be done with warmth. Detachment without warmth becomes ice, and ice drives connection away. The art is to remain warm, present, polite, even affectionate, but not invested. You listen, but you do not react. You smile, but you do not seek. You can hold her gaze, but without leaning forward energetically. In this way you train her and yourself to respect the sacredness of your attention. Your focus is not a commodity to be traded for her approval. It is an expression of your sovereignty. When you begin to live this way, something powerful happens, your self-respect grows, and the paradox is that as you respect yourself more, you become more respected. She senses this shift and responds to it on a level that is primal and emotional, and yet many men become trapped in guilt at this stage. They worry that by not constantly engaging, by not soothing her every insecurity, they are being neglectful. But I want you to remember something essential. Emotional mastery is not about pleasing others, it's about alignment with yourself. When you remain grounded, when you respond thoughtfully instead of reflexively, you become trustworthy, not because you always say yes, but because your no is clear and consistent. Imagine again, she texts late at night, stirring drama, Before, you might have rushed to reply, anxious to resolve the tension. Now, you take your time, you let it be. You trust that the relationship, if it is worthy, will endure a pause. And in that pause, she begins to experience your absence as something compelling, something new. That pause is where desire lives. Desire needs space. Desire cannot breathe in the atmosphere of constant attention and emotional caretaking. Ignoring, in this sense, creates oxygen, it creates distance, and distance allows her imagination to engage again. This is where dark psychology becomes a tool of intimacy rather than manipulation. When used consciously, this approach serves not just your own dignity, but also the erotic tension that makes relationships vibrant. A woman does not desire a man who is consumed by her. She desires a man who sees her clearly but is not controlled by her, who is kind but not needy, who is present but not tethered. The more you cultivate this energy, the more you will find that her responses shift. She begins to lean in. She reaches out, she softens. The very space you created, the pause, the absence, becomes the doorway for renewed intimacy. But it is essential to hold your frame here. The moment you abandon this calm, the moment you become reactive again, the polarity collapses. She will sense it immediately. Women are exquisitely attuned to emotional incongruence. If your ignoring comes from wounded pride or a need to provoke a reaction, she will sense the inauthenticity and withdraw further. Therefore, your ignoring must be clean. It must be rooted in genuine self-focus. You are not performing. You are simply living your life with the understanding that your attention is not something to be distributed indiscriminately. It is sacred. This is why ignoring at its highest level is not really about her at all. It is about you reclaiming yourself, about ending the cycle of constant seeking, about stepping back into your own fullness. From this place you can invite her in, but you no longer chase. And in this invitation there is space for a different kind of relationship, one where you are no longer the emotional caretaker, where you are no longer eroding your boundaries in an attempt to maintain closeness. Instead, you become the man who can stand apart, and that, paradoxically, is what draws her closer. Let's continue this journey together, because there is more to understand about how this psychological space you create actually deepens connection and rewires both your mind and hers. Let's continue this journey together, because there is more to understand about how this psychological space you create actually deepens connection and rewires both your mind and hers. As you embrace this art of psychological detachment, you will begin to notice a profound transformation within yourself. The energy that you once invested into controlling her reactions, soothing her insecurities, or anxiously monitoring her attention will now return to you. And in this return lies your greatest power, the rediscovery of your own value. This brings us to a deeper truth. Ignoring a woman when done consciously is not about turning your back on her. It's about turning toward yourself. It is about recentering your energy so that you are no longer a man desperate to be chosen, but a man who knows he is already complete. You see, women are exquisitely sensitive to whether a man is living from fullness or emptiness. When your energy is desperate or grasping, it leaks. And she feels it. She may not always be able to articulate it, but she knows when you are clinging versus when you are calmly holding your ground. That calm is irresistible because it creates contrast, and contrast, light and shadow, closeness and distance, warmth and absence, is what sustains desire. When you reclaim your center, you become a mystery again, a question she cannot easily answer, a man who is present but not predictable. This is where dark psychology enters as an art form. It's not about manipulation or cruelty. It's about understanding human nature, her unconscious attraction to challenge, mystery, and polarity. The truth is that desire feeds on uncertainty, predictability kills it, and by withdrawing your energy strategically, You restore that delicious tension between the known and the unknown. But this must be done with an emotional intelligence that many men lack, because if your ignoring is too cold, too distant, too punishing, she will close her heart. She will sense cruelty and reject you. So how do you walk this delicate line? How do you ignore without alienating? It begins with a mindset shift. You ignore not to punish, but to preserve. You ignore not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself enough to no longer abandon yourself for the sake of pleasing another. You ignore to create the space where real respect can return. When a woman feels that she cannot completely consume a man's emotional availability, something primal awakens in her. She realizes that she does not fully own his mind, his focus, his essence, and that is deeply attractive because it places you back into a position of being your own man. A man with boundaries, a man with mystery. At the heart of this dynamic is a paradox. Ignoring well is an act of presence. You are still there, but differently. You are still warm, still kind, still attentive, but no longer enmeshed in her fluctuations. You listen when she speaks, but you no longer rush to fix or solve. You observe when she withdraws, but you no longer chase after her with explanations or reassurance. You become a lighthouse instead of a boat tossed about by her emotional waves, and a lighthouse does not run around seeking ships to rescue. It stands firm, shining steadily, letting those who wish to draw close find their own way. And here's the beautiful secret. When you stand in this way, you will notice that women begin to return to you energetically. Your absence creates space for their longing. Your calm creates contrast for their desire. Your refusal to chase makes you a man worth pursuing. But you must remain consistent. The moment you collapse back into old patterns, over-explaining, over-texting, over-engaging, you break the spell. She must sense that this is not a tactic but a transformation. This is who you are now, a man who governs his attention, who respects himself, who does not abandon his center for the sake of short-term emotional validation. And when you embody this consistently, you will see that women begin to treat you differently. They will reach out more. They will soften. They will become curious about you again because you have become a question again. And questions are what stir desire, but this is about far more than getting a woman's attention. It's about transforming your relationship to yourself. It's about becoming the kind of man whose value is no longer dependent on external approval. It's about reclaiming your energy, your focus, your purpose, your discipline. Because let's be honest, when you were over-invested, over-texting, over-available, you were not really in your masculine power. You were leaning too far forward, seeking to be chosen instead of knowing you are already complete. Ignoring, when done consciously, helps you correct this imbalance. And what does this look like in practice? It's simple but profound. You begin to live your life first. You do not interrupt your focus every time she calls or texts. You do not rush to repair every emotional wobble she has. You let her experience your absence as something real, not punitive, but dignified. You choose when to engage, and when you do, you engage fully but without neediness. You are able to listen without seeking a particular outcome. You are able to be present without being enslaved to her moods. This is what makes you magnetic. This is what makes you rare. Because in a world where most men are conditioned to chase, to soothe, to appease, a man who is self-contained becomes extraordinarily attractive. He stands out not because he is aloof, but because he is anchored. He is calm, he is sovereign, and here's the key. Ignoring at this level is not about creating distance forever. It's about restoring the polarity that keeps relationships vibrant. When you create space, she feels it, and that space allows desire to breathe again. This is why ignoring is both an art and a psychology. It requires self-awareness, discipline, and emotional intelligence. You must hold your center without closing your heart. You must remain warm but not over-available. You must be present but not desperate. And the reward for this work is immense. You will not only find that women treat you differently, but you will also discover a deeper respect for yourself. You will become a man who no longer chases validation, but who inspires desire naturally, effortlessly, simply by being himself. So as we wrap up this conversation today, I want you to take this with you. The art and dark psychology of ignoring a woman is not about playing games. It's about returning home to yourself. It's about remembering that your energy is valuable, your attention is sacred, and your presence is a gift, one that should never be given cheaply. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to stand, to breathe, to live fully in your own truth. And when you live this way, everything changes. I see you. I honor your journey. And I invite you to begin practicing this art, not from a place of anger or resentment, but from a place of dignity and strength. I see you. I honor your journey, and I invite you to begin practicing this art, not from a place of anger or resentment, but from a place of dignity and strength. Because here's where the real transformation begins. As you embody this calm detachment, you will start to see something almost magical happen not only with her, but within yourself. You stop chasing, you stop reaching. You stop trying to persuade, convince, or win her approval. And as you stop doing all of that, you suddenly realize how much of your own energy was being consumed by anxiety and need. And what do you discover in that empty space where all that energy used to be? You find yourself again. Your hobbies, your work, your friends, your purpose. You find moments of quiet where your mind is no longer racing with what she thinks or feels. You sit in stillness, and in that stillness your power returns. Ignoring a woman properly is not passive aggression, it is deep, intentional self-care. You are no longer making her the center of your emotional universe. You are making yourself the center again. And when you become the center of your own life, something shifts in your entire energy. You stand straighter. You speak more calmly. You feel grounded in your decisions, and she feels this shift too, often before you even say a word. You see, a woman doesn't respond only to your actions. She responds to the energy behind them. When your energy is chasing, she pulls away. When your energy is contained, she becomes intrigued again. But here's the challenge in this phase. You must resist the temptation to break your new frame. It can feel uncomfortable at first. If she notices that you are pulling back and tests you with coldness or silence of her own, it can trigger your old instincts to chase again. That's where discipline comes in. This is where you begin to master not just your actions, but your emotions. You notice your urges to reach out, and you breathe. You observe your impulse to fill the silence, and you pause. You allow space to exist between you and her, even when it feels uneasy, especially when it feels uneasy. Because it's precisely in that discomfort that transformation happens. That space is where you grow as a man, where you step into your own power fully, where you realize that your peace is not determined by whether she is texting back quickly or treating you the way you want. And when you achieve this internal calm, this emotional equilibrium, you stop reacting. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing to win her over. Your attention becomes selective, not because you are withholding it to punish her, but because you recognize it is precious. This brings us to something important. When you ignore a woman skillfully, you aren't really ignoring her. You are ignoring your old pattern of neediness, of overgiving, of self-abandonment. You are saying no, not to her as a person, but to your old unconscious habit of pouring your entire energy into someone else's emotional landscape. And what you're saying yes to is your own grounded masculinity, your own life, your own growth. Think of it like this. Before, you were a man leaning forward energetically, leaning forward into her responses, her moods, her attention. But now you are leaning back, you are sitting comfortably in yourself, your posture physically, emotionally, psychologically changes. And this change is incredibly attractive because it feels rare, stable, magnetic. She feels it immediately. Even if she doesn't understand it consciously, her body and mind register the shift. Suddenly, she can no longer predict you. Suddenly, she no longer feels entitled to your attention. Suddenly, you are no longer a man easily moved by her every text or every moment of coldness. And what happens then? She starts to reach out more, she starts to lean in, she starts to wonder where your mind is, and that wondering reignites the flame of attraction. But this is where emotional mastery is essential. You must not get pulled back into old patterns the moment she shows interest again. If you rush back, eager and needy, you will collapse the dynamic immediately. She must feel that your new center is authentic and stable, not a performance or a temporary tactic. This is what I call the long game. You are no longer playing for immediate validation. You are playing for respect, for polarity, for deep attraction that can only exist when you remain rooted in your own life. And in this long game, there is a beautiful paradox. The more you lean back, the more she begins to lean in. The more you tend to your own growth, your own health, your own projects, the more she becomes curious about you. The more you reclaim your time and space, the more she desires to enter your world. But remember, ignoring is not about coldness. If you become cold, you drive her away permanently. If you become mean, you lose the trust and warmth that any relationship needs. The art here is to remain kind, warm, and even affectionate, but self-possessed. You offer warmth when you choose, not when she demands. And you do this not to manipulate her, but because you respect yourself. You recognize that true love, true connection, cannot exist when one person is constantly overinvesting, while the other takes that investment for granted. You begin to walk through life with a quiet confidence, a calm assurance, a subtle smile that says, "I know my worth, and I do not give it away cheaply." This is what makes a man magnetic. This is what makes a man desirable on a deep, primal level. Because when you embody this state, you communicate that you are not desperate. You are whole, you are living your life on your terms, and ironically, it's precisely this energy of not needing her that makes you most attractive to her. Because a woman does not want a man who is consumed by her. She wants a man who sees her, appreciates her, desires her, but who does not need her in order to feel whole. So in this sense, ignoring is not withdrawal, it is self-possession. It is stepping fully into your own life, your own mission, your own passions while remaining open to her, but not dependent on her. And when you live this way, not only do your romantic relationships transform, but so does your entire experience of life. You become calmer, clearer, more grounded. You stop living at the mercy of other people's reactions. You discover the power of saying no, not with anger, but with dignity. You become a man who is no longer anxious about being accepted because you have already accepted yourself. And as you do this, something truly beautiful happens. Women begin to treat you differently. They respect you more. They pursue you more. They feel drawn to your energy because it is so rare, so stable, so attractive. This is the power of ignoring, not as a game, but as a profound practice of self-respect and self-containment. So as we move forward, I want you to reflect. Where in your life have you been leaning too far forward? Where have you been overinvesting your energy, your attention, your care without boundaries? And where can you begin, gently but firmly, to lean back? To pause, to breathe, to allow her and yourself to feel the power of your absence as well as your presence. Because this is the secret. The most magnetic men in the world are not the ones who are always present. They are the ones who know when to step back, when to create space, when to allow desire to breathe. And in doing so, they command respect quietly, effortlessly, with grace. Because this is the secret. The most magnetic men in the world are not the ones who are always present. They are the ones who know when to step back, when to create space, when to allow desire to breathe. And in doing so, they command respect quietly, effortlessly, with grace. You see, ignoring a woman when done masterfully is a dance, not a standoff. It requires a rhythm, a sense of when to lean back, when to stay silent, when to pull your energy inward, and when to re-engage without surrendering your frame. It is not a technique of avoidance. It is a way of embodying your boundaries while keeping warmth alive. This subtlety is what so many men overlook. Too often, men treat ignoring as an on/off switch. They either overinvest or withdraw completely. But mastery is in the nuance. Ignoring is about stepping into your masculine authority in such a way that your attention becomes selective, deliberate, and felt as valuable because it is valuable. This raises an important question you might already be feeling deep inside. How do I hold this position without tipping into indifference? Because let's be honest, women can feel the difference. If you withdraw coldly, she will sense rejection, even contempt. And rejection shuts her down. The key is that your detachment must come from a place of self-containment, not bitterness. A man who is at peace with himself and fully engaged in his own life has no need to punish or reject. His absence simply becomes part of the natural rhythm of his life. And so, when you ignore with warmth, you are not withdrawing love, you are withdrawing neediness. You are not withholding attention to manipulate, you are protecting your focus so that you can offer presence only when it is authentic. This is what makes ignoring so powerful. It signals that your emotional availability is no longer automatic, and that creates an irresistible tension. Let's explore that tension for a moment. What really happens inside her when you create this kind of psychological space? First, she feels curiosity. You are no longer predictable. Your patterns have shifted. The emotional ground she stood on, where she felt certain you would always be there, always be available, always respond instantly, has changed. And that change disorients her. This disorientation is not cruelty, it's contrast, and contrast is the fuel of desire. When you ignore artfully, you remind her that your presence is a choice, not a default, and that choice elevates your value in her eyes. You become a man who could be anywhere, doing anything, and yet you choose to engage on your terms. And that's where the paradox reveals itself again. When you become selective, your attention increases in value. When you become less available, you become more desired. When you stop chasing, she begins to lean in. But, and this is critical, this is not a game of withholding. This is not about keeping score. This is about shifting your orientation from one of external validation to one of internal alignment. And as you do, something profound happens. Your self-esteem strengthens. You begin to experience yourself not as a man constantly reacting to her signals, but as a man in command of his own energy, emotions, and time. You begin to realize that your emotional well-being is not tethered to her approval. This is where the transformation reaches its deepest point. When you no longer seek approval, you become infinitely more attractive not just to women, but to everyone around you. You become grounded, people feel safe around you, they sense your inner peace, your emotional discipline, your calm confidence. And a woman, in particular, feels this on a visceral level. She senses that you are no longer a man she can control with moods, drama, or withdrawal. You have stepped into your sovereignty, and from that place you radiate power, the quiet, dignified power of a man who does not need to chase. This is what women deeply crave, even if they would never say it aloud, a man who is free, free from the need for constant affirmation. Free from reactive behaviors, free to offer love and attention from a place of wholeness, not dependency. But here's where most men falter. They mistake this freedom for aloofness, and aloofness is cold. It creates distance, but not polarity. It pushes her away instead of pulling her toward you. True freedom, the freedom we are cultivating here, is warm. It's inviting. It says, I am here, whole in myself, open to sharing my life, but I will not give my emotional attention away to earn favor or approval. That is where your power lies. You see, so much of the dark psychology behind ignoring is really about reclaiming your value. It's about reminding yourself and her that your attention is precious and that your emotions are not up for negotiation. You give your presence as a gift, not as an obligation, and that changes everything. Imagine for a moment how different your relationships would feel if you lived from this place every day. If you woke up each morning grounded in your own purpose, attending to your own needs first, offering warmth and care from fullness rather than neediness. Imagine how differently women would respond to you, not as someone they can easily predict or control, but as a man they are drawn to, intrigued by, curious about. And most of all, imagine how differently you would feel about yourself. No longer chasing, no longer reacting, no longer losing yourself in her moods and validations, but instead living from a deep, calm place of inner mastery. This is why ignoring must never be about retaliation. It must never come from a place of punishing her for her behavior. The moment you operate from resentment, the moment your energy turns bitter or cold, you break the very dynamic that makes this so powerful. Instead, ignoring must always come from this calm, deliberate place of self-respect, of choosing yourself first, of living your life fully and inviting her to join you in that life, but never allowing yourself to become absorbed into hers. That is the essence of masculine polarity, being grounded in yourself while creating space for her to be drawn toward you. And yes, there will be times when this feels uncomfortable. There will be times when your old habits of seeking approval rise up again, when you feel tempted to explain yourself, to soothe her every emotional fluctuation. But those are the moments when you must breathe, when you must lean back, when you must trust that your strength is not in your ability to fix every situation, but in your ability to remain centered, calm, and grounded no matter what is happening around you. And when you master this, you will discover a deeper truth about attraction, that it has far less to do with what you say or do, and far more to do with the energy you bring into every interaction. You become magnetic not because you chase, not because you please, but because you stand tall in yourself, because your attention is deliberate, because your emotions are disciplined, because your presence is valuable, and the more you embody this, the more you will realize that ignoring is not a tactic to get her back. It is a way of reclaiming your time, your energy, your peace, and that is where your deepest power lies. And the more you embody this, the more you will realize that ignoring is not a tactic to get her back. It is a way of reclaiming your time, your energy, your peace, and that is where your deepest power lies. Now, as we arrive at the heart of this conversation, let me ask you something gently but honestly. When was the last time you were truly at peace when you were engaging with her? I don't mean moments when things were temporarily smooth or affectionate, but genuine peace, the kind that comes from knowing that your value is not determined by her responses, her availability, her approval. This is what mastering the art and psychology of ignoring ultimately leads you toward. It leads you to a place where you no longer need her reassurance to feel secure, where you no longer lose yourself when she withdraws, where you no longer abandon your own rhythm just to sync with hers. You are here to live your life fully, not half. Present because you are anxiously monitoring a woman's mood or reaction. You are here to cultivate depth, presence, and power within yourself, and only then can you offer something of true value in your relationships. In this way, the art of ignoring becomes the art of sovereignty. It becomes the art of choosing yourself first, not selfishly, but responsibly, because no woman, no matter how beautiful or captivating, can complete you. Completion begins inside. And here's the beautiful paradox that runs through all of this. When you no longer need a woman's approval to feel whole, you become infinitely more attractive to her. Your energy shifts from grasping to grounded, from anxious to calm, from seeking to self-contained. And in that energy, a woman feels safe even as she feels challenged, safe because you are consistent, strong, and clear. Challenged because she cannot fully possess or control you, and that combination, safety and challenge, is exactly what stirs her desire on the deepest level. So what does this look like in practice as you go forward? It looks like being fully absorbed in your work, your purpose, your passions, not neglecting her, but not prioritizing her moods over your mission either. It looks like being emotionally generous when you choose to be, but not feeling obligated to fill every silence, resolve every conflict immediately, or respond instantly to every text. It looks like maintaining your dignity even when she tests your boundaries, especially when she tests your boundaries, because women will test to feel the contours of your strength. It looks like trusting that a worthy relationship will survive the pauses and spaces you create, and that any relationship that collapses when you step back was built on unstable ground anyway. You see, you are no longer a man who operates out of fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. You are becoming a man who lives from fullness, from calm, from a centered place of self-possession. And when you live from this place, your interactions with women, all women, not just the one you may be thinking about now, will change forever. You will stop over-explaining, you will stop over-investing, you will stop trying to win approval through constant accessibility. Instead, you will offer your attention as a gift that you control, a gift that is no longer given reactively, but intentionally. And that changes everything. In this transformation, your silence becomes meaningful, your absence becomes felt. Your restraint becomes a statement. It says, I am here, fully alive in myself, open to connection, but never willing to abandon myself to maintain it. This is where deep respect is born, not just from women, but from everyone who encounters you, because people can feel when you are living from self-containment. They can sense when you are whole, stable, and sovereign, and women especially are drawn to this like a magnet. But let's be very clear, this is not about manipulating women's emotions to gain control. That would cheapen you, reduce you to a man who plays games rather than lives in truth. No, this is about mastering yourself, about refusing to give your energy away cheaply, about allowing space in the relationship for curiosity, for desire, for longing to emerge, instead of smothering everything with constant engagement. Because longing is essential, a relationship without longing quickly becomes a friendship. Polarity disappears when everything is known, when every emotional need is immediately met, when there is no space left for wondering. By stepping back, by ignoring in a warm, deliberate, calm way, you allow her to feel that longing again. You give her room to miss you, to imagine you, to pursue you, and in doing so, you shift the entire dynamic, not through force, but through quiet mastery. This is the art, this is the psychology. This is the reason why ignoring done well is one of the most powerful practices a man can cultivate in love and relationship. Because it's not really about her at all, it's about you, it's about who you are becoming, a man who is no longer governed by anxiety, a man who no longer bends himself to seek validation, a man who no longer sacrifices his own boundaries to maintain closeness. A man who is free, free to give love without fear, free to walk away without collapse, free to live his life fully regardless of whether a woman leans in or pulls away. And from this place of freedom, your relationships will transform. You will notice that women lean toward you more naturally. You will notice that respect, admiration, and desire return, often without effort. You will notice that the very act of leaning back creates the space where attraction thrives. So I invite you, as you close this video and reflect on everything we've shared, to ask yourself, where in your life have you been over-investing? Where have you abandoned your own boundaries in the hope of winning her approval? Where can you begin to reclaim your time, your attention, your energy, calmly, deliberately, gracefully? Where can you begin to lean back, breathe, and allow space for her curiosity to return? This is not about turning your back on love. This is about loving from a place of strength, from a place of fullness, from a place where you no longer chase because you have nothing to prove. And when you live this way, you will not only become infinitely more attractive to women, you will become infinitely more at peace within yourself. And that, my friends, is the greatest attraction of all. Thank you for sharing this space with me today. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below, your reflections, your experiences, your stories. And remember, if you found value here, please like this video and subscribe to the Intimacy Lab for more conversations about love, psychology, and the art of living and relating well. Here's to reclaiming your dignity, your power, your peace. Here's to living your life on your terms. And here's to becoming a man who is quietly, confidently, and irresistibly magnetic.